Okay, so setting up the meeting now. Setting the meeting up. Today's class is going to be on networks. It's not something that I usually. Hello, hello, hello,
Hello.
hello.
Guys, can you hear me? I'd like a confirmation on that.
Yeah, bro, we can hear you.
Okay, so it's 7:03. We will starting from somewhere around 7:10. Ask all the people if you have friends in there. Ask them to join in. We'll be starting in shortly.
Yeah, okay. Bro, I have been started recording, means I was now going out, so I have been started recording. I
Okay,
will edit,
okay.
upload
It's
the
great.
video.
It's great. It's
Okay.
great. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I will mute and I will go. It will be
Yeah, it's
recorded.
great.
I will see it later.
Okay, okay, okay.
Bro,
But
means
ask your friends who are in.
yeah, means now I have a doubt. Can you clear me a second?
I didn't get your question.
Means
What's your what?
I have a doubt. Can you clear me now?
Yeah, what is it exactly?
Yeah. Yeah, today you sent us a video regarding no, yeah, malware. I
Script.
understood. Yeah, malware.
Yes.
I understood. Another video which you sent, cryptography. Yeah, that I was not clearly understood. Means I didn't understood anything.
Okay, okay. I understand the crypto
Hello.
video when it was recorded. It was a bit distorted. Don't worry. We are having this crypto class, and hopefully it will suffice for it. Like we'll have a better interaction this time.
Yeah,
Hello.
sure. With today, what you will going to do? Networking, is it?
We'll continue where we left off from last day, like firewalls and stuff. And yeah, we'll might just delve into a bit of the crypto. That's completely the discretion of the lecturer today, which is Shumallo.
Okay, then I can see it later. No problem. Means I have the networking doubt. Means what is subnet masking exactly? Means I didn't understood exactly what is subnet masking. I understood a bit. I can say it.
Hello.
Means
Uh,
Hello. Am I audible?
yeah, sure. Yes, Shumallo, you're audible.
Yeah. So you had a question about malware. So uh, I actually made that malware video. So if you have any questions regarding the malware video, you can ask me.
bro, means malware. I understood clearly because everything was fine. Means I saw two videos till history of malware. I have been seen today.
Okay.
Huh. Till the history of malware, I understood there was nothing problem in it.
Okay. So
Only-
regarding the
Yeah.
cryptography,
Only bro said that today they are going to start cryptography. So even see
no.
that.
See,
Yeah, okay.
cryptography. See, for the cryptography, we have actually planned out a separate set of courses. But yeah, we will cover something in this lecture. Hopefully, it's encryption. Okay. So this is just exactly a study into like how the broader cryptography, because I plan to put the cryptography course right from information theory and then going on through the popular ciphers and then teaching cryptography like that. But uh, today we'll try to cover something which is like encryption, which is the version of cryptography that computers usually understand and which it's used in networking. So I'll try to cover encryption for you today. And Devjit, please answer that subnet masking question.
Okay, so what's your question about subnet masking exactly?
Yeah, I understood subnet masking that we are going to just give zeros and one where zeros are not been counted and one we will counter as the space. That much I understood.
So
Sir,
where is the doubt exactly?
Yeah, it's a doubt.
What is the doubt? I didn't get your question actually. Like,
Yeah, okay.
which part
Can
of
you
it do you
in
don't understand?
hello,
while I
sir.
was
Hello,
doing the networking,
hello,
yeah, hello.
Hello.
hello, sir. Sir, this classless and classful and this subnet mask. This was not covered in the last class. That's why
So,
we
Yeah, it will
yeah.
be. It will be. CIDR will be covered today,
oh, okay, sir.
hopefully.
See, I will,
So,
I'll be
what?
going, I'll be going through classless, like I'll be going through the different classes of IP addresses and trying to hopefully make sense of it. Like class, see, I'll introduce you to classful and classless addressing, and go through class A, class B, class C addresses, and I'll try to explain in theory what's a subnet and how a subnet is granted and how you can calculate subnet masks from a particular IP. So I think
Yeah, bro.
it's better if it's on a hands-on basis. So like there are websites you can use to calculate these, and I'll go through class A, class B, class C, and hopefully you'll get to see what like subnetting is and why classless IP addressing comes out on subnetting, and how that goes out. So
Yeah,
hopefully
bro, sure, bro.
I'll
Means today means I have been started recording the classes because I will be means now at present they gave me a work, so I have to go. So I will record the whole session and even I will give it to Arshit bro also. Then I am going to watch it once again. So only
sure.
means
So but
I will
if
watch it
if
and
you
if I get any doubts, I will ask you in next session.
okay, I don't know you can always reach out to us via on our Telegram platform.
Yeah, bro. Sure, bro. Thanks, bro. No, they are calling, bro. Means I will mute myself and I have been started recording. Let the recording will be on. After that, I will edit the video and send even to Arshit, bro. Also, okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, bro. Bye, bro. Thank you.
But so like, do you have people joining in? It's 7:10.
Yeah, I'm admitting them as we speak. I guess it's time we start the class. Shumalo, over to you.
Okay, okay. Uh, so is it visible? Like, is the screen visible right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I guess the last slide that was covered by it was this slide, right? ARP and casting. Devjit, please confirm.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Shumalo. Yes.
So this is the last slide that was covered, right? So today I'm going to start from the next slide. Is classful addressing, classful IP addresses, right? Uh, I'll start from here, right?
Yeah,
Please.
yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I guess you're all familiar with the different layers of the OSI model. Everyone, the layers of the
Yes, sir.
OSI. Yeah. So IP addresses really come across when you want to like find out a destination location and then send packets to that location, right? So we use different protocols to send packets over. Like there's a TCP and UDP protocol you know about, and the source and the destination locations on the network are
Sir,
pointed up.
excuse me.
Okay.
So, sir, some disturbance is coming on your voice, or someone's mic is on, so your voice is not clearly audible to me.
Uh, I can hear your voice. Uh,
Such a
this is
disturbance was coming.
the noise just came in right now. It's not from my mic. Okay, there's nothing going on.
Shumalo, I'm muting them. If we have disturbance, I'll mute them.
Okay, sure. Like it's not coming from this side. Like I have no sound going on here right now. Hello, hello.
Yeah, Shumalo, please go on ahead.
So they did you stay on right? I need like a feedback
Yeah,
sometimes.
I'm there. I'm there. I'm there throughout the
Okay,
session.
okay, thanks. So like you know about TCP and UDP and use exchange packets and IP addresses are the locations of the network where you actually pinpoint places where from through which packets will travel. So to figure out such network maps or to understand from where the packets are coming in a real like in an attack scenario or when you are doing pen testing or when you are evaluating your client or your victim's machine or the network, what's the tool of your choice? What tool do you use? Like hear from it, from it. So when you are working in the network scenario, when you are analyzing network connections, what are the main tools that you'd be on a lookout for? Are you use to analyze the network? Anyone?
Nmap.
Nmap gives you information about the the IP address that you're entering, and it gives you information about the services and the network map to some extent. But what other tools do you like except for Nmap? Any other tool? You heard of Wireshark?
Let discover.
Yeah, right. Yeah, have you heard of Wireshark? Wireshark.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
yeah. So I'm going to like go through the slides and then I'm going to show you a bit of hands-on stuff on how this thing works in Wireshark and how you can distinguish like which IP systems you've been given to. If I have time, I'll open up Wireshark and show it to you. So yeah. So coming to classful addressing and classless addressing, there are we you can see on the slide right now that there are five classes of IP addressing: class A, class B, class C, class D, and class E. And what's determined the class is how much of the IP address is the net ID or the network ID, or how much does the network occupy in the IP address network ID. So in class A, you have only the first byte or the first octet which occupies the network ID. It's the first byte, byte one. In class B, you have byte one and byte two, or the first two octets. In class C, you have byte one, byte two, and byte three, the first three octets. And then you have class D, which is for multicast addressing, and class E is reserved or experimental. It's not in use. Right? So if you're given an IP address, you have to determine on which classes these IP addresses fall on. And when you're going to subnetting and explain the idea of subnets, so are you introduced to the idea of subnet? Like I'm not asking you to have the like addressing overview of subnets, but do you
No,
know
sir. No.
what's a subnet? Like, you know what's a
No.
subnet?
No,
So
sir.
okay, sure. So I don't have slides for that now, but I'll try to explain a bit. So when you're assigning IP addresses or you are the network administrator of a particular place and you're going to, and you are assigning computers to a network, in something like an office, you'd like to create smaller groups of like related computers, right? So in a network, right? So these groups in a network is what forms a subnet. Okay, when you so how many of you know how your ISP or internet service provider actually provides you with an IP address, and what type of an IP address is it, and how then data packets go from your computer to, say, like when you ping Google, what exactly happens in that entire process? How many of you are like aware of how stuff is like distributed and assigned to people? Anyone?
DHCP.
Okay. So yeah. So classful addressing and classless addressing is just a view of the IP address, which uh, yeah. So the theory classful IP addressing is this. You can read about the data on this slide. You can take a screenshot of it. So an IP address consists of two parts. The part which tells the router on receiving a packet that the net ID and the host ID. Okay. So in Wireshark, you can actually see these parts and like the packet and how an internet packet looks like. I'll open up Wireshark for a bit and show it to you people, like just changing screens. So this is Wireshark, okay? This is Wireshark. So these are the these are packets which so you see source and destination, source destination, and what really, if you are into networking and if you are into cybersecurity and the networking aspect of cybersecurity, what you really need to see is if you're given a packet capture, like that's what comes in CTS, that's what comes in real life analysis. If you're given a capture, how do you determine what protocol is being used, and how do you understand which packets are of interest, right? So we see this chain cipher thing, and as you go deeper into networking, you would understand that there are sequence of packets or like rules and stuff that's put into networking, and that's what's called a protocol, right? So you need to see into packet captures. You need to understand that this entire transactions fall under this protocol, and what really helps you clear out the clutter is the destination address or the IP of the, the destinations that we're seeing over here. So right now this is just running a capture of my Wi-Fi, which this laptop is connected to, and I had a XAMPP server running, and this is just me pinging the XAMPP server and getting stuff back from it. So yeah, this is really transactions within a computer, but like it's just me pinging the XAMPP server. But you can see that like there are several. So I'll show you a slide as to how you can understand what class an IP address falls into, and you can tell me like, or we can do something hands-on. So they did just note down this IP address once. This 204.79.197.222.
Hold on a second. I'll just type it up.
Yeah, just
Uh,
type it up.
can you can you repeat?
204, 204,
204 dot
79,
79 dot
197,
197
222,
2
triple two. Okay, 222.
okay, triple 222. Great.
Okay, so um, can you see this screen right now? Like what's my Wireshark is still on the screen, right? Okay, so this is a IP subnet range calculator, and Devjit, can you tell me the IP address?
Yeah, Shamalu, sure. It's 204.79.197.222.
Okay, so as you can see that this website subnetcalculator.org, it's really a good website for understanding like calculating IP classes, and this is a class C address. Like on the slide, you saw the ranges which class A, class B, class C fall under, and 204 it's clearly going beyond 197, so it's a class C address. Okay, so what's a class C? A class C
Shmalo,
means hello.
Shmalo, I'll just interrupt you here. Hello, Shmalo.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
just
yeah.
interrupt you here for 1 minute just to refer that. Guys, if you go to our social media handles, there you will find a very comprehensive chart about this IP address ranges and CIDR and stuff. So please do check out our social media handles after this class. It will really be helpful. It's a bit down the line, but it's there. Have a look at the post and you will definitely able to correlate it. Thank you, Shmalo. Over to you.
Yeah, sure. So if you want to the networking aspect of cybersecurity, you would need that chart. You need to keep that chart handy, or you need to keep these kinds of tools at your hands to calculate which class an IP falls on. And this is a class C IP, right? So you can see that for class C, this is the class address range, and this is the class bit usage. This is the network, and this is the host. Okay. So this is a good website if you want to calculate the class of any IP address, and like this thing is not within a subnet, so it still follows class rules of the IP address. But what happens if your IP address is within a subnet? I'll show it. Like I'll go back to the PPT. Okay, so this is just a small chart which like class A, class B, class C, number of networks. This is just data for the three classes of IP address, and this is classless IP address. Okay, so this is done using a network address and a mask. Okay, so yeah, what's a subnet? And what's a subnet? A subnet is, as I said before, is a smaller group within a network. If you are to assign IP addresses, like you are managing the block equivalent network security, then you need to put different groups of computers which are related, or like to assign blocks to for like router management, or like you are to it's a corporate organization, and you need to put network rules, and also you need to put subnet masks on each of these. And what happens in subnetting is that when the packet is received, it's very intuitive to understand that the router cannot just look at the net ID. It has to look into the subnet mask, right? To locate which host this thing has to go to, right? But uh, then you'd have a class B address which has the first three octaves covered and still be a class B address, because there you have a network mask that has been put on. So these kinds of IP addressing where you do not have the rules of classful IP addresses conserved is a classless IP address system. So a classless IP addressing system puts in a mask which kind of breaks or tampers around the rules of classful IP system. But in theory, it's just a viewpoint of viewing an addressing protocol and making it easier and making it possible even for the router to go forward with traffic management. So, yeah, a classless system does not follow the rules of the class A, class B, class C system, and something which like should be class B going by the rules, or should be class A going by the rules, is not that. It's still a class A address with a mask, but so therefore the first three octaves are covered, or like some that rule that I explained in the first video, like class A first octave, class B first two octaves. That's no more because you need to also put a subnet mask to, and that net ID along with the subnet mask together form the net ID. So original network ID and the subnet mask together form the net ID, and therefore you understand that the number of addresses will increase. What happens if you put a mask on something? It's just a layer of abstraction, right? You can assign more addresses in that block, right? And so number of hosts per total address, that will decrease. So number of addresses, like when you are assigning them, that's increase, and that's what we want when we are designing a effective like, packet distribution system. So that's with like theory of classful and classless addressing. This is something you need to uh, pan out a network architecture and understand like what's happening on a network architecture. If you have to like perform cybersecurity attacks, these are the first steps of mechanisms and building of the like map where you need to attack. And so therefore, using Wireshark, there's something called filters in Wireshark, so you can like pinpoint, take out which addresses that you're looking for and gather packets from that. Okay, so now we'll be moving to something that's more closely related to real-time attacks and something that you need to look out if you are on the offensive or on the defensive side. If you are making malwares or if you are on the network engineering side and if you are managing networks and putting up
Hello,
network rules. Hello? Yeah.
sir. I think there was some vehicle noise disturbing the class. There's so much disturbance.
Devjit, Devjit, was that like was a noise like that?
I'll just find out and mute it.
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
my audio is right. There's no problem with this audio, right? Devjit,
Yeah,
like
but there is somewhat a vehicle noise interrupting the class. It's so much disturbing from backside. I don't know from where it is come.
Devjit, just confirm that like this audio is fine and like
It's muted. It's muted now, and I hope we'll be having a fewer number of disturbances right now. I'll look after it.
like just confirm that this audio is fine, right? Like my audio is okay, right?
Yeah, your audio is perfect.
Okay. So right, a firewall. Now, when you are into the offensive and the defensive side of cybersecurity, you come up with methods to either keep threats out and let good stuff in, let authenticated stuff into your network and keep stuff out of your network. The entire set of rules which govern your network's in-out policies are called firewalls. Okay, so a firewall is often installed on a network, and like these configure the network and set rules for the network, which determine which kind of data or traffic gets to come into the network, make requests, and which kind of traffic does not. This is like the first, like your fence in a house. This tries to filter out threats, but if you are a like, good offensive malware developer or a person who is good at cyber attacks, you would know also how to bypass most of these systems, and therefore these systems also need to be updated. And as you've seen in perhaps in malware course in my malware videos or in the whole concept of malware, that in to malware we have something called an antivirus, right? So or an anti-malware system. So in network threats, you have a firewall, and a firewall is um, it, it's really implemented in a various number of ways. The oldest uh, category of firewalls are either behavior or signature based, and the modern firewall categories which are still being worked upon are anomaly based and heuristic. So, an heuristic form of firewall is probably something that every ideal network security personnel should aim towards. That you get a traffic, you don't put it through a set of predetermined rules to find out, because those rules could go public sometime. It could be leaked, and we could tinker about with your malware or with your like device which you want to pose a threat upon to make your request or make your traffic look as legit as possible. And hackers are really good at spoofing stuff. They're really good at making something look like it's legit. It's like a Trojan. So if you are purely putting a stuff on behavior and signature based systems, that's not gonna work because if somebody tinkers around a bit of the code, the signatures would get messed up. Uh, if it's behavior based, so it's like behavior based are the like oldest of all kinds. So increased traffic would just shut down your network. So if sometimes if you are in a situation where there's lots of traffic coming in, probably due to legit traffic, due to high server access, that might pull the kill switch. And we need to focus upon is anomaly based and heuristic based firewall systems where you treat each threat and putting it through an intelligent algorithm, putting it through a, a system which will categorize its threat level and then take a decision. You treat each threat individually. You don't put them in blind like categories, big but categories where anybody who knows how the categories are configured might as well get over it. So there are two principal components of a firewall. It's just the two abstractions that we use. There are an IDS and an IPS, an intrusion detection system and an intrusion prevention system. So an intrusion detection systems work passively. So what passively means that it's not on the active side. It does not take a packet and then look into it right there. It keeps it and then processes data with some delay, and IPS works mostly in an active fashion. So you could like take in a packet and take in a request and put it through an IPS to check for if it poses any like real-time harm on the system. And an IDS would actually tell you if something is wrong going about with a deeper processing level, and an IPS usually does not have so much of a deeper processing level as an IDS. And so IDSs are probably some things that we are going to work upon, and you're going to work upon if you are interested to make better network security things. Like you're going to make heuristic based IDSs, and the entire goal for network engineer is
Bro,
to
can I just interrupt a little bit? Can you just explain that actively and passively thing once
yeah
again?
yeah yeah that's it. So
Yeah, please. Thank you.
a passive. What do you mean by an active service and a passive service? Uh, an active service is something that works on the network and takes particular event and works on it then and there, right? So in a network, if suppose packets are coming in, requests are coming in, so therefore you have an IDS which takes into account all these and then processes them. And an IPS tells you, and an IPS takes a decision where to block it or let it through some layers at least. An IDS tells the network administrator if there has been an intrusion or there has been something that's red flag, so the network administrator or the like backend algorithm can stop that intrusion. But an IPS works on a higher level of abstraction, so it takes in a data and poses an immediate response as to allow it or not to allow it. And the really ideal thing that I was going to explain is to take an IDS and an IPS and take an IPS as close in theory to an IDS. So you want something that's processing data at a very deeper level, but also does it fast and does it instant and does it differently for all kinds of data. So it's not something that's behavior based. So it's something heuristic and to which takes fast decisions and like it's not completely possible to make something that's completely passive into active, but we could also always go through some like, process to make it as fast as possible because an IPS really takes in a decision at a very fast, a very quick response time, and an IDS does not have that much amount of a quick response time. So an IDS would take it process it to some level, and then flag it. That doesn't mean that an IDS does not work. An IDS could still flag a request and tell the network administrator or tell the network master to stop it, and that still just might prevent an attack. But some things, if it poses an immediate threat again, and if and if it slips through the IPS, then even if the IDS detects an intrusion, there is also no guarantee that the attack could be prevented. So you need to take an IDS and make it work as fast as possible, and you need to take an IPS and process and make it analyze the data as big as possible. So it's more like an ideal abstract which works on both cases. So then you can see the different advantages of a firewall, uh, which is there on the PPT, and yeah, firewalls are configured for specific email access. Like if you want only some people mailing you out, you can put that on a firewall. They're they're excellent auditors. They are capable of recording stuff on disks and telling you what kind of traffic your system has been facing. It can work as a verifying or certifying authority, and then can like verify if traffic going in and out is legit, if there's something wrong in your system, if something is being attacked. There are a lot of things that a firewall, if properly configured, can do. And the same point, if a firewall is misconfigured by a security personnel or it's tampered with by an insider mole, that's the same amount of damage a firewall can do. And if it's behavior based, if it's those kinds of firewalls, and somebody just works as an insider mole and just changes some rules and some aspects of it, and that's gonna mess with your system. And that's what something is you really look about for if you are into like, network security. And yeah, there are some things that a firewall cannot do. A firewall cannot prevent social engineering. On some level, it can't. If heuristic detection methods are enabled, then social engineering attacks might someday be detected by firewalls. But a firewall, in theory, cannot be configured to take out social engineering attacks, because if somebody mails you from Google, it's kind of legit, because if other people mail you from Google, you reply, and then if somebody mails you from Google asking your credit card details and you send them, you are just an idiot. Firewall can't help you in that. Okay, so a firewall can't protect against what has been authorized. Again, if there's an insider mole working and he chooses just to authorize uh, traffic which would harm the system, firewalls can't help you in that. But again, if you are developing good heuristic based systems which do not require manual authorization or which do not allow manual authorization, then obviously firewalls can protect you against all kinds of threats. But again, heuristic systems are more or less ideal till now. They have been only been trying to be implemented with machine learning or stuff like that, or taking different parameters. But again, you could just you could just fool even ML systems if you are intelligent enough. So yeah, it can't protect you against something that's authorized, and therefore you need to understand that even with a firewall in your network, you need to put extra layers of uh, like malware detection on your system or threat detection, even on this on system. It's not enough to have one on the network. Yeah, they're as effective as the rules they're configured to enforce. And if the traffic can fool and the traffic can look legit, so the firewall again can't stop that attack. So yeah, you need to you can't put your entire security on the network administrators and like the network administrators done something stupid. So yeah, firewalls are good fence to your house. That doesn't mean that you build a house without good windows and good locks. Just a fence. Firewalls are classified into hardware type software firewalls, packet filters, proxy firewalls, application gateways, circuit level gateways, and SPIs, stateful packet inspection. So, how many of you know what's a proxy? What's a proxy? What's a proxy connector? What's a proxy? Anyone?
Sir, it's a
Same
server
sir.
which requests another server on our behalf. The main server or our target server will see that the request is coming from the proxy server and not from us.
Exactly. Something that sits in the middle. Okay. So you send something to the proxy server. The proxy server allows, and the same comes from. But when you are discussing firewalls, it's really not on the attacking side; it's on your side. So then the target server responds in your system. The target server responds to the proxy. The proxy relays it to you. So you understand that if the proxy has some kind of a filtering system involved, it can detect if the target system which sent the response back is malicious or not. So there are hardware firewalls, and I'll discuss the different kinds of firewalls in some detail. Like I'll go into different kinds of firewalls right now. So an hardware firewall is preferred when a firewall is required on more than one machine. A hardware firewall provides an additional layer of security on a physical network. And the disadvantage is that if and if it's compromised, the machines are compromised, then the firewall falls apart. So you need to understand that on some level, networks are a combination of both hardware and software systems. The software is just what enables a network to direct packets in and out and tell people where the packets are going, and a big part of it is also the hardware and the like hardware code that's put into it, the routers and how the routers are made. And a firewall device could just be made and plugged into the router, and that could work as a like whatever is connected to that point in the system could pass through that hardware filter, and a hardware might have firmware code running on it, code that's come built in on chips, and that can work as a firewall with like minimum, like it can be pre-configured, and it's not accessible by the systems. Like you can't access a hardware firewall right away, but if it's connected to some point in the network, then surely it acts as a good intermediary firewall. But again, if this hardware is compromised, the firewall's down a kill switch. So if you're putting hardware firewalls, you need to protect those hardware firewalls behind good amount of security, and that's why we do not prefer hardware firewalls for reasons, and that's why still knowing that communication forms like the communication in even the OSI layer at some point uh, allows, and for the networking layer, which is like the network interface layers, which are the hardware systems, the network interface cards that provide like the hardware level of abstraction for packet transactions or digital communication to take place. Hardware filters are not used that much because if the hardware gets compromised, that's it for the next point of the system. So we have software firewalls, which are the most common type of firewalls which we've seen, and all the other kinds of firewalls like packet filtering and all that. These are all mostly based on software firewalls. So yeah, these could be implemented on code. This could be implemented on firmware level code, and whenever you're working with firmware, you have to understand that they're on chip, and at some level that's not entirely software, that's the hardware, that's the configurations that the chip has been made into, and therefore that falls under that. But most of the time these methods discussed below, they, they would form a software firewall. So what's a packet filtering firewall? That's just what the name implies. It allows some packets and allows some packets based on TCP headers of each packet, and these headers and these firewalls decide the like look at the headers and then decide on whether to let it in or whether to let it out. So yeah, and the IPS takes a decision whether to let it in, whether to let it out, logs it. The IDS performs a deeper analysis and it tells the network administrator or informs any backend system whether an intrusion has taken place. But again, a packet filtering firewall just depends on IP headers and TCP IP headers, and you need to know that those things can be spoofed by network like people who are willing to compromise your network for these. So, what's a proxy firewall and an application gateway? A proxy firewall is, like I mentioned, it's proxy. So it's something that sits between you and the target and the server, the client and the server, and the client brings the proxy brings the server, and then the server relays back to the proxy, and this proxy with some kind of a rule that's associated to it uh, that can uh, work as a firewall in that layer. Since it sits on the application layer of the OSI model. What's an application? Um, okay, so an application gateway is something that's put into the applications or the services that runs on a network, like FTP, HTTP, SSH. Uh, there are lots of kinds of rules that these applications itself could be configured to. You can take, you can download XAMPP on your system. So if you are going into network security, I'd strongly tell anyone who has Windows or like Linux to just download XAMPP, and XAMPP provides you with all the kinds of services that you can put on an active server. It helps you set up an Apache server. It helps you set up MySQL, and you could configure these like using the configure files to make up some of these application gateways which act as firewalls because it allows some kinds of requests in these applications to take place. Of course, it allows some kind of requests, blocks them. And then there are circuit level gateways and stateful packet inspections. So circuit level gateways work at the sessions layer. They forward data between networks without verifying it. It blocks incoming packets on the host but allows traffic through fast switch cell. Uh, this is something that you really need to get your head around on. And for circuit level gateways and stateful packet inspections, if you have any doubts, go through the internet. Like these two have a lot of material on the internet, and you could bring us if you wanted to review on like any kinds of firewall. But uh, circuit level gateways and stateful packet inspection are really deeper layers of the IDS system mostly because they don't actually if you are working on something you could in an SPI you have to put it on a higher level of data analysis, and that really could be done by an IPS, and that's why you need an IDS. What's a circuit level gateway? It works at like a circuit level gateway operates by relaying TCP connections from a trusted network to the untrusted network, which means direct connection between the client and server never occurs. So yeah, the the main goal of a firewall is to see that there's nothing going. The server doesn't have real access on the client. So if the server doesn't have real access on the client, he could tamper anything or he could get reconnaissance information back. And here by server, we always be referring to malicious like attacks which are taking in from this kind of a system which poses as a server to your network. So whenever I'm trying to attack your network, I am the server because I'm sending in malicious requests, I'm sending in false requests, I'm sending in requests which are crafted to divulge information, and that's what your firewall needs to prevent or like needs to stop. Um, yeah. So okay. What's an ID? Like I have explained like what's an IDS and an IPS, and they're like given on the slide. If you want to go through them, please go through these. Like, I've explained in a short like what's an IDS and what's an IPS, and yeah, someone has a doubt really regarding the passive and the active systems. I guess seeing this, your doubt could be clear. Like, go through this and you would understand. Um, okay, so moving on to the next part, like a firewall prevents or like lets in data or lets out data, but that's just preventing your machine from getting attacked. But usually in a corporate network or usually in a system which you're working on, you always that's not the only thing that you need to take care on a network. Yes, your network needs to be protected against attacks and you need to be protected against attacks. But there's also something else that you need to be protected against, and that's your privacy. If someone is trying to intrude your privacy, they always do not need to attack your system. They can just see the packets which are traveling over the internet from your system, intercept them, and find out what you're doing and divulge information which they can use against you. And that's where encryption comes into the picture. Encryption is a system by which we take in plain text and use a key to encrypt it. It's using a cipher. I would if I had some time here, I would try to explain encryption in a better system using information theory. But all you need to know is that something that takes readable information, information which makes sense, and converts it into some form which doesn't make sense if you do not know the cipher key. If you have not agreed upon a particular system of encoding and decoding which could be made unique for each transaction, you cannot find out what that mm, like, ciphertext means and what that encoded piece of text would mean. And the idea here is to make this system as elaborate as possible without it being attacked by stuff like brute force attacks, where you would like encounter if something is intercepted, and if somebody can try out a good lot of combination or like permutation and combination of the keys, and they can divulge the information without getting to know the actual key like beforehand, that's where your encryption system is bad. And that's when encryption systems have developed. And there's a really a chain from like symmetric ciphers to asymmetric ciphers, and where how these symmetric and asymmetric systems are being used in tandem together. That's a hybrid system. A symmetric system essentially agrees on one key, so you use something to encrypt it, and then you use something same thing back to decrypt it. So somehow you need to send this key over to the other person without that key getting intercepted. So that's the main challenge in encryption, symmetric encryption, to exchange that one symmetric key without like getting intercepted in the middle. And the asymmetric encryption is where you have a key pair instead of a key. So you have a public key and a private key, and as you might know in like asymmetric systems like AES, you take on or RSA for example, you take like your public key, and like public keys are available for like they are on the internet. So if you have a key pair, you post your public key on the internet, and if somebody wants to send you a message, they encrypt it with your public key and their private key. And when you want to decrypt it, you use your private key and their public key. So this kind of key pair that's being used over here. So you need to just know the other person's public key to send that person a message with your own private key. So like, you can you can use a public key private key combination to, and here you don't need to securely exchange anything. That's like you can never exchange the private key. You're not exchanging the private key for any asymmetric system. So you just need to like exchange the public keys which are on there. But even if the attacker has knowledge of the public keys of either of you and does not get to know the private key, that person really poses no threat to the data exchange. And one kind of encryption that like you need to look out from the internet.
Sir, how these private and public keys are to be generated?
Yeah, the rules for generating the public key and private key for the systems are really different for different kinds of algorithms they are used. Um, Mostly they're on the theory of factoring and prime numbers. So they're essentially big prime numbers, which it really depends on the algorithm, but it has something to do with, I just tell you, it has something to do with primality and the problem of factorizing big numbers. And the entire thing rests on the system that factorization is not that easy, but like generating prime numbers and multiplying them is easy. So I'll if I get some other time, I'll go into this public key private key system of encryption, and you could look up RSA. Like you could look up if you're interested in public key private key systems, I would recommend you to look up something called RSA, or the Rivet Shamir Al algorithm for like, asymmetric encryption, and it's very simple if you understand. If you don't understand, reach out to us. Like, I'll try to help you. In, if you don't do have a problem with like AES or
Oh,
RSA systems, okay?
okay, thanks.
And something that you have seen on the internet, that's why I put this out. You've seen like HTTP versus HTTPS, and a protocol which has been in place for to allow encryption layer to be a part of network systems, and that's the SSL protocol, the Secure Sockets Layer. And the SSL has now like renamed, and it's called SSL TLS, it's the Transport Layer Security. And the SSL is again an asymmetric system, and SSL keys be verified by a certificate authority, and that's how where you have the concept of an SSL certificate being generated, and then you can use these SSL keys to transfer data from your server to the client without that data getting intercepted. So this here, it's just the attacker is it's not the server who's the attacker here. Is the server is just someone within the network who has access to your network communication. So who's tapping down data like something in Wireshark. So if you're tapping down data in Wireshark, try to ping sites with an HTTPS connection and try to like view that code back on Wireshark from some other computer. So you have a mobile and you have like you ping some HTTPS site and put your computer on the same network, capture that communication between your mobile and the HTTPS site, and try to figure out what like what content was on that site. Like try to rebuild that same request, and you can't because those requests are encrypted with SSL TLS. So that's where encryption comes in, and encryption is really something long, and SSL certificates and like the end up concept of asymmetric and symmetric encryption. They are something which require a lot of discussion, but it's just that these like, systems are based on cipher systems which help people authenticate messages and like transact messages securely. So if I get some other time, I'll go into encryption, and that's something you need to understand information theory, and then going a bit further, a new type of computing is coming up. It's called quantum computing, and that really poses a threat to the currently available encryption systems and how they pose a threat to the currently available encryption systems, and like what form of cryptography could you use in like when quantum computers come in, and that's something else for another topic. But that's something you need to understand if you are in network security and you wish to create tools for network security and private exchanges. So firewalls are one aspect of it where you detect some attack, prevent it, and encryption is just another aspect of it where your attacker is not someone outside but someone inside who's tapping down information, and you need to secure your information even from people inside your network. So, like, there the attacker is within your network. It's tapping down information. So you need to protect your passwords. You need to protect what credit card information you are say transmitting to Amazon, and that's where SSL and TLS is coming, and encryption plays a great role. So I guess like you get two different kinds of attacks in the network scenario. One which occurs outside and which can be prevented by a firewall. And suppose someone inside your house is tapping your phone, and you do not even want them to know what is going on between you and your friend who are talking on the phone, and that's when encryption comes in, I guess. And that's there. So yep, that was all for today. Today, like it's almost 8 o'clock. So anybody has any questions? Like now, throw your questions. Dejit,
Sir, will there be a session on those
The
public and private key?
let's see if there's a session on encryption and all. Let's see. Stay tuned to our network. Like if there's something that's coming up, we'll surely let you know.
guys, are there any questions from what was taught today? I don't see any in the group.
Hello.
Hello.
So, have you that you have explained about Wireshark? So that what actually the Wireshark and what does it mean to?
Yeah, I didn't get a question. Like Wireshark, what?
I mean to say that you have explained about Wireshark, right?
Yeah, I put I I didn't go into Wireshark at all. Like this one.
Yeah, it's a basic one. I just
Yeah.
want to know that what actually Wireshark does, and with Wireshark, what can we do? Is it a tool or a code?
It's a tool. Okay, it's available on Linux platforms as well as Windows. So it's a tool for uh, digi-
Isn't it like for like checking out the SYN and ACK packets, like
Hello,
to
hello.
trace them
No,
out?
see,
hello,
that
hello.
that's not just the only utility of Wireshark. Wireshark is a very advanced network security tool. What it basically does is, when you think about Wireshark, it does a lot of things. With Wireshark, not only we like have a look at what packets you are sending, but all the packets in your vicinity. So suppose we are in the same room and we both are browsing the internet with Wireshark. I can snip the packets from the air into my computer over the air. There is something called OTA sniffing, which is basically when you're transferring data, what you're basically sending. You're sending packets to whom are you sending the first packet? To the default gateway, which is usually the router. And this happens over a wireless network, right? And wireless networks, it's very, how do I put it? It's open to all. Everybody can intercept those networks and read those packets. That's what Wireshark does. You take the packets, you store them as a PCAP file, and you analyze it. This is one of the reasons why I refuse to use insecure FTP or HTTP, because if somebody in the room is sitting there with his Wireshark open, he can just read whatever you're sending in a clear text. Get it?
Exactly, and that's where encryption comes in, right? So you need to have encryption in your systems to prevent such sniffing attacks. And Wireshark is what we call a network sniffer, right? So yeah, that's what Wireshark is. Thank you.
Oh yeah. Okay, sir, got it. Thank you.
And any more questions, guys? If there are none, we'll just adjourn the meeting. Seeing none, I guess that will be all for today, guys. Thanks for attending. And yeah, again, I'd like to remind everybody here that do check out our social media pages, because there you will find some very relevant tables related to CIDR, which you can just have a look at. That will be great. Another little thing which I like to mention is, guys, we'll be soon starting another session. So please kindly refer this to your friends. We are already growing. We are already across 11 countries, and 3K plus students have been under our tutelage. So we are hoping to increase these numbers. So kindly do share about us to whatever circles, your colleges, your schools, wherever you can, because after all, it's a free cybersecurity platform. And I hope the classes are going good, and we are doing our bit of doing our best to bring to you our best. So yeah, if you appreciate the effort, this is all we ask for you, is to spread the word and let the community grow, because good community is a very strong base on which you can build our future communities, right? So these are the infancy. We are now at a very infant stage, and from where we can build upon, and it's completely on you guys. So do share and all the good stuff, and we'll probably see you in next class. Goodbye, guys. Good night, everybody. Can we have a thanks for Shumallo sir for taking out time and delivering
Thank you,
this
sir.
wonderful intro?
Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
so much.
Welcome.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
I hope you enjoyed.
Shumallo
I
the
hope you
one
enjoyed.
made the malware videos. He's great with this. So yeah, we'll see you again. And leave the feedback in the group. How that's another thing before we sign off for today.
Okay, sir.
Guys, feedback for two, three things. Check out our social media pages, share share our initiative, our community, and again, and last but not the least, the feedback. Okay, guys. So with this, I'm just adjourning the session. Thank you, Shumalo, for taking out the time, and everybody, be there. We will soon have another class very soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye.